right, it's a beautiful, beautiful Friday morning. Jumat Karim to all the Muslim brothers and sisters there, and TGIF to a lot of you, especially my co-anchor, that's sitting beside me. It's a beautiful Friday. It's raining in some parts of Abuja. It rained around Apo, just around 6 a.m. And it looks like it's going to rain in other, parts of the city as well, because you know how it rains in Abuja,
yes,
it's like
indeed.
in sections, pockets of rains in different areas.
Weather forecaster.
All right, yes, anytime Sagir is actually here, it promises to be a very, very interesting show, especially for me. I don't know about you, but I'm Dashan Husseina Usman, and thank you for tuning in to Daybreak right here on Trust TV. We're live at the Federal Capital Territory.
And I'm Sagir Ibrahim. Thank you so much for joining Daybreak this morning. Dashan, good morning.
Morning to you, and it's actually good to actually have you here.
Yes, indeed. So what shade of green is this?
It's
Okay, so let's
leaf green.
Okay. And I'm wearing leaf black.
Leaf green.
Let's leave the topic for now. Let's start with the headlines this morning.
Yes,
Kano Assembly screens confirms 16 of 19 commissioner nominees.
All Beavers results were deleted, says digital analysts.
NLC kicks against planned tariff hike.
All right, let's take a look at the details of the stories. The Kano State House of Assembly has screened and confirmed 16 out of 19 commissioner nominees sent to the House by the State Governor, Abba Kabir Yusuf. The nominees were confirmed as commissioners and members of the State Executive Council after passing screening during plenary of the House on Thursday. Now, the state governor had sent a 19-man list to the House for confirmation as commissioners on Tuesday. However, after screening, 16 out of 19 commissioners were confirmed by the House in a motion moved by the majority leader, Lawal Hussaini, representing Dala local government area. Daily Trust reports that 2 out of the 3 remaining nominees that are yet to be confirmed, that's Hajia Aisha Saji and Sheikh Tijani Awal, are currently in Saudi Arabia performing the Hajj exercise. The duo have been directed to avail themselves before the House after their return for their screening. Now, the third who is Comrade Aminu Abdul Salam, who is the current deputy governor, was exempted from screening on the grounds that he already took oath of office as the deputy governor. I recall that the state governor on Wednesday directed all the commissioners, nominees, to declare their assets in order to conform with the provisions of the Code of Conduct Bureau for them to be confirmed as commissioners.
Also, the Presidential Election Petitions Court has admitted forensic analysis of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, showing the deletion of results for the February 25th presidential election. The 5-member panel of justices of the court, led by Justice Haruna Tamani, admitted the documents on Thursday after they were tendered by the digital forensic analyst Hitler Egwonwu Nwala. The witness testified that the test done on a sample of 110 BVAS machines showed variations that could be nationwide. He explained that results on the 3,163 BVAS used for the election in the FCT, which ought not to have been deleted as there were no governorship elections in the territory, were also deleted. When counsel to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, asked whether he was aware that the sample represented only 0.16% of the total BVAS in the FCT, he said he had not done the calculation. He also admitted that he was unable to get more BVAS devices for the analysis. Meanwhile, PDP lawyers Chris Uche SAN and Eitayo Jegede SAN also tendered forms of EC8A series for Ondo and Jigawa State. When counsel to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, asked whether he was aware that the sample represented only 0.16%, he also repeated that he had not done the calculation and admitted that he was unable to get more devices for the analysis.
All right, let's take a look at more of the stories. Now, the Nigeria Labour Congress has kicked against the alleged plan to increase the electricity tariff by 40% on July 1. The Congress described the move as insensitive and callous, saying it reflected an organized indifference to the well-being of consumers, especially the poor ones. The NLC said this in a statement by Comrade Joe Ajero on Thursday in Abuja. The statement reads, the plan to increase electricity tariff by 40% by July 1st is both insensitive and callous and reflects an organized indifference in the well-being of consumers, especially the poor ones. The massive increase is explained away as a response to the over 100% increase in the pump price of premium motor spirit. Details reveal a movement in inflation from 16.9% to 22.41%, threatening a needle 30, and a shift in exchange rate from 441 naira to 750 naira. And they believe not even these figures are a justification for the reckless proposed tariff increase, he said. And with that, we'll wrap up highlights at this hour and move on to more stories.
And for packages now, as Muslims in Nigeria prepare to celebrate Eid al-Kabir, the traditional sacrifice of goats is becoming increasingly difficult for many families due to the significant increase in prices. In Katsina, the cost of goats has significantly risen compared to that of last year, making it challenging for some to afford the sacrifice. As a result, sellers are recording low patronage while customers' purchasing power has drastically reduced. Jamil Mabai has details.
Ram sacrifice is a symbol of the Eid al-Kabir celebration. It is a tradition for privileged Muslims to sacrifice rams during the festival. But this year, the prices have hit an all-time high. A rise in price from 20,000 naira to 70,000 naira last year to 50,000 to 150,000 naira this year is making it difficult for many families to afford the sacrifice. The price of rams is high this time around because things have changed compared to last year. A ram of 100,000 last year is now 200,000.
Frankly speaking, I'm not surprised by the sudden rise in the price of the ram because of the following reasons. One, they devaluate our currency, depreciation of naira as well as inflation, and which affects the purchasing power of many Nigerians to the extent that today Nigerians are not talking of ram. They are thinking of food, how to buy food. And you know, food is more essential than ram.
Experts attribute the high prices to a combination of factors, including the devaluation of naira, inflation, and the farmer hardware crisis, which have disrupted the supply chain.
Again, also there is this issue of insecurity, especially farmer herders conflict, which has been affecting actually the even availability of the rams.
While some sellers are struggling with low patronage, others are benefiting from the high demand. Whoever bought ram from us last year came back this year. Some have already paid for the rams here. I have even sent for more rams from Dankama. Some people want the government to intervene and subsidize the prices of rams and increase salaries. But experts believe that sacrificing a ram is a luxury, not a necessity.
In a situation whereby you just subsidize ram, you understand, at the end of the day you'll discover that the only beneficiaries perhaps will be civil servant. Like there are some states, especially in northern Nigeria, that give a ram to civil servant. You understand? But what about those who are not civil servant? Ram is a luxury. In a situation whereby we have a government that cannot even subsidize food stock, how can you expect them to subsidize ram?
For many families, the high prices mean they will have to skip the tradition of sacrificing a ram during the festival. Jamilu Mabai, Trust TV News, Katsina.
All right. So, well, we really hope that despite all the inflation and despite the high cost of, rams and food prices this year, that a lot of people, especially struggling households, will be able to, in some way, celebrate Salah.
I do hope so as well.
That's the hope. All right, so let's move on to more stories. Now, ahead of this year's Eid al-Kabir celebrations, the price of ram in Kano State has doubled due to the increase in the cost of living. Now, Trust TV correspondent Idris Jibrin reports that unlike last year, traders say they are recording low patronage this year. The report.
Salisu Ilyasu is the chairman of Ram Sellers Association in this market. He says the price of ram and other related animals used for sacrifice by Muslims has tripled compared to what was obtainable last year, and that not so many people are coming forward to buy. Honestly, this year there is problem. Last year, many people are coming forward to buy ram, but this year you can see the market is scanty. It's only us that are within here. There are not so much buyers coming here to buy, and this is because of the so much problems that we are having. The problem of feeds and supplement, high cost of transportation, courtesy of fuel price increase, among other challenges, are largely responsible for the problem this year.
Tsadar abincin dabbobin da kuma tsadar mai.
Well, some of the problems that also come together to bring about this much challenges that we are facing is the issue of food and supplement. The food we are buying is so expensive. The transportation that we used to transport from places far and wide where we used to go and buy these rams is also very expensive. Sometimes we pay 10,000, 11,000 naira per ram before it gets to Kano from, let's say, Bauchi. According to traders, although the price has tripled, but they try to bring things down in such a way that people can afford. Yet, the price, they say, ranges from 60,000 naira to 250,000 naira per ram, the worst within the last 3 years. You see, this ram that you are seeing, they are very expensive. Like this one, last year we sold this one about 30,000, 35,000 naira. But this year we are selling this type about 60,000 naira. So you can get ram of 60,000 naira up to 250,000 naira, in most cases up to 300,000 naira. In some places they are even selling it up to 400,000 naira. Rams and other sacrificial animals like cow and camels are nevertheless available in most markets visited across Kano State. But there are growing concerns that the price could even go high in the next coming days. Idris Jibrin, Trust TV News, Kano.
And away from preparations for the Eid al-Kabir celebration, the Lagos State Police Command on Thursday paraded 32 suspects for their alleged involvement in cultism, traffic, robbery and criminality acts. The parade took place in the command headquarters in Ikeja, GRA. Take a look at the report.
While parading the 32 suspects, the Lagos State Police Commissioner assured Lagosians that the command under his watch will not relent in the fight against any form of criminality. The Commissioner, who was represented by the command's Public Relations Officer, Benjamin Hundeyin, said the command recovered 1 hammer, 5 axes, 2 knives, 5 locally made pistols, 2 locally made double-barrel guns, 22 live cartridges, 2 expanded cartridges, as well as 1 Toyota Hilux. Hundeyin further stated that they arrested 8 cultists from Ikorodu, 3 from Isolo, 11 traffic robbers at Ijora, and 5 other cultists from Badagry.
Happy to inform the people of Ikorodu that with their cooperation, we've been able to take out 8 of the suspects causing unrest in their community. We also have an interesting case here. Is a case of stealing. The Toyota Hilux, you can see right over there, the white Hilux, was actually on a car stand, and 2 people came in the middle of the night to rob this vehicle. The car stand is somewhere in Ilopeju. It later turned out that one of the robbers is actually a security guard employed by the owner of the car stand. But the day he was off duty, he connived with one other to come and rob that place. And the security guard on duty that day was actually seriously injured, and they were able to take away the Toyota Hilux. And we immediately got information, we swung into action and were able to recover the vehicle in faraway Kaduna State.
Command also paraded a police sergeant for failing to report at his new station in Osun State, but rather resorted to extorting unsuspecting motorists.
One of them is a police officer, but he's a deserter. He has been transferred out of Lagos State to Osun State for over a year, and he has refused to go report. He has remained in Lagos, conniving with some other civilians to engage in this nefarious activity. His name is Sergeant Oluwaniyi Ichanusi, 36 years, and his partner in crime that we have here is Maxwell Agida, 42 years. He's a driver, commercial bus driver, corporate driver, who joins in to accost motorists, claim to be police officers, and claim to take them. They have different gimmicks: take them to EFCC, take them to police, lock them up, make sure they go to jail, and their victims, out of panic, would actually part with huge sums of money. So they have been arrested.
The command assured that cultism, which has been identified as a major security challenge facing Lagos, will receive the needed attention in order to ensure that it is nipped in the bud.
The education of children in some rural communities in Benue State has become a major source of concern for many at the moment. Now, this is because many are displaced and cannot afford the luxury of education or even find themselves in circumstances that have made formal education out of their reach. Now, Jimmy Adzan Davis visited some villages in Benue and reports that this all-important part of the society is totally neglected.
In some of the villages visited, there was no primary school for the basic education.
I am from this community named Fada. The settlement of Fada here in Kiab, my local government. We are having challenges a lot in terms of school. We have no school. Some people say we have public primary school here, but the public primary school is not functioning. No staff, no teaching. So we found it difficult to carry our children to other places at Boko, Makodi, Zakibian, and so many places.
Some of the villagers say things have gone from bad to worse, as there are some structures on ground in some places without teachers.
Before I was a pupil in this school, there were a lot of teachers, in as much as community teachers that were helping us here to, teach us and guide us in our academic success. But rather now, there are no teachers in this place.
I graduated in RGA Primary School, Savnum, and there was no secondary school here, thereabout. Then I have to move forward to look for a places that will continue my education. Thereabout, I faced some challenges from other places. I schooled from Boku. I faced some challenges.
Even for the elementary level, most of the villagers now travel to urban or semi-urban areas for their educational needs.
And now, before you will carry your children here to Boko or to Uba, the expenses is too much. If you Okada people are carrying a person here to Uba is 2,000 naira. Then from Uba to Boko, you may cross river at Brook. From Brook to Boko, the expenditure are too much. Carrying food each and every time, charcoal and the rest of things. We are facing much problem in this issue.
Especially when I am about to go back home to the school, I suffer to took my food to go, because before you went there, you must cross a river. From there, there's even transport is too cost by.
If at all the government assists us in certain things like constructing this building for us, but so far as teachers are not around, this building is just like a waste of time. Rather, the school here is not functioning properly because the community teachers are not around. And
the non-payment of teachers and other civil servants under the Otom administration for dozens of months is one of the reasons for the total neglect, according to the rural dwellers.
And that's the much we can take for news packages at this hour. We'll now be taking a short break, and when we return, we'll be serving you headlines of National Daily. Stay with us.
That's great. It's good to see you.
Where you find that they look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Now it's time for the newspaper review, and we'll start by taking the headlines on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper. Now we have the lead story here that says federal government to end polio December, says Shetima. And we have riders that says virus has declined in Nigeria by 84%. Bill Gates reiterates $7 billion aid. concrete decisions needed, says Dangote, and governors says will support all initiatives for healthy population. And you can find a pictorial there of the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, receiving the French Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs, Catherine Colonna, as he arrives at the Palais Brognier for the new Global Finance Act in Paris. Now, this is attributed to the headline here that says African countries suffering debt hangovers, says Macron, UN. Details can be found on page 4. We also have more stories. Fuel price hike, salary earners turn cab drivers, sleep in offices. Now, Hajj, Nakon to complete airlift tomorrow. How BDC operator, pregnant wife were found dead in Abuja. Sad one there. At the top of the page, India out of Nigeria's top 5 trading partners. LASU, best graduating student, says I survived on Gari, had no hostel. And we also have INEC deleted FCT Beavers results, says PDP witness. And these are some of the stories on Daily Trust newspaper.
And at the top of the Punch newspaper, federal government, state, local governments share 786 billion naira May revenue. Catch that story on page 24. Labour discourse on collision course over electricity tariff hike. You want to read more? Well, it's on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. Terrorists planning attacks on religious fund centers, DSS warns. Also, for the leading headline there, DMO worries over low revenue as Nigeria's debt nears 81 trillion naira. FG's 10 trillion naira revenue can't support fresh borrowing. That's according to the Debt Management Office. Government to issue promissory note as judgment debt nears 3 trillion naira. Also, Paris Summit, subsidy removal, FX policy needed for survival, says Tinubu. And you could see some pictures there of President Tinubu and some dignitaries, including the President of France. Below that, Ogun tops as NPC registers 49,000 deaths in 6 months. Scholars should not be relegated for money bags, according to LASU best students. And finally, on the Punch, Oshomole Adeleke, others bid farewell as Dr. C is buried.
All right, let's take a look at Guardian newspaper, and we have the lead story that talks about flood of fury. No respite for Bayelsa, Kogi Rivers, 30 others ahead of another cloud burst. That's the big story. Details can be found on pages 4 and 5. Again, NNPC fails to remit as Federation shares 786 billion naira for May. We also have it's no longer business as usual in Nigeria. Tinubu rallies investors. Missing Titanic sub suffered catastrophic implosion, passengers dead. And forensic experts claims INEC deleted results on Beaver's machine. 20% doctors, 33% nurses diagnose inaccurately, says federal government, hinting. NLC cautions government against increasing electricity tariff. And these are some of the stories on the Guardian newspaper.
And for this day newspaper, federal government states get higher allocation as FAC disperses 786.161 billion naira May revenue. Also, FIRS targets 40 million traders in fresh initiative to improve VAT remittance by informal sector. You can catch that story on page 5. Also, curse of Titanic resonates as Titan submersible implodes, killing all 5 on board. You can catch that story on page 35. Quite an unfortunate one there. Also, the lead story, Tinubu in Paris, ignoring Nigeria will be perilous to the universe. A couple of riders there join world leaders to tackle debt poverty issues. Says he's prepared for business, ready for investors to come to Nigeria. Meets with Frexim Bank, EBRD president. Also, at meeting with Shatima, Gates Foundation votes $7 billion intervention for Africa in the next 4 years. And these are some of the stories on the front page of This Day this morning.
All right, let's take a look at Nigerian Tribune. From the top of the page there, polio immunization. Bill Gates commits $7 billion at meeting with Shatima governors. Pepsi INEC deletes FCT presidential election results on Beavers, witness alleges. We also have the lead story here that says NLC kicks against electricity tariff hike, says planned hike insensitive and callous. We also have Oyo lawmakers worry over surge in kidnappings, killings to convene security summit. Appeal court reinstates ex-NIA DG Dauda, affirms industrial court judgment. We also have no approval for salary increase for political office holders. Presidency says over 2 million to perform 2023 Hajj in Saudi Arabia. 10th National Assembly, North Central, South lawmakers for majority leader, juicy committees. Southwest may clinch deputy house leader. Details on page 4. And we have missing Titanic submersible crew confirmed dead after catastrophic implosion. These are some of the stories on Nigerian Tribune.
Outrage over proposed 114% pay rise for Tinubu. Others. This is the lead story on Daily Sun. A couple of riders. Presidency denies approval. Obi, CTA, Farotimi, others slam federal government. Says situation in country does not allow for salary rise for leaders. And beside the nameplate, Nnamdi Kanu, Ohaneze, Masob, IPOB, Lambas, Asari, Dokubo. You want to know what they said? Well, it's on page 26 on the Daily Sun. And below the pictorial, INEC deliberately deleted results from BVAS, forensic experts tell Tribunal. Group begs Atiku Obi to withdraw case, joint government of national unity. Catch that story on page 27. Also, U.S. immigration lawyer testifies against Lagos deputy governor. Also, NLC demands suspension of planned increase in electricity rate. And Tinubu to EBRD, Afrexim Bank, were ready for business. Dignitaries' massive crowd bid DAR founder Dokwesi goodbye. He was humility personified, says Bishop Dunia. Also, Bill Gates Foundation to commit $7 billion on interventions in 4 years. And finally, below the belt, or rather on the belt, DSS alleges plan to attack worship centers during Salah. That's it for the Daily Sun.
All right, let's move on to the Nation newspaper. From the top there, Lagos Blue Line rail to operate from August. Boost on Marina Mile 2 route. We also have exchange rate determines airfares, says IATA. Travelers to pay more. Now, we also have Naira weakens to 765 Naira per dollar. Eminent Nigerians bid Dokwesi farewell in Agenebode, and no 114% salary raise. We also have below the nameplates there, the removal of subsidy cuts tanker loading period by 5 days. And the lead story here says we've removed obstacles to growth. Tinubu tells investors. And writers here says President promises more investment-friendly reforms. Nigeria seeks UK support in war against insecurity. Labour Party, Obi's witness contradicts each other at election tribunal, and the NLC cautions against electricity tariff hike. And these are some of the stories on The Nation.
Finally, for the business day, petrol marketers, regulators see mergers as competition begin. Also above that, we see FMCG firms' profit margins drops to 10-year low. And beside the pictorial, MTN demands board meeting over rift with IHS. Soft drink sales rise 58% despite price hike, according to a report. You could catch that story on page 2. Explainer how Nigeria can curb crude oil theft. And that's much we can take on the front page of the Business Day newspaper. So this morning we will be joined by our newspaper reviewer, talking about no other person than Malam Nuruddin Abdullah, the editor at 21st Century Chronicle. Interestingly, we're adorning the same color of attire this morning. So welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes, so perhaps I should start with business. Tinubu is in France, and the key takeaway is we're ready for business. And then back home in Nigeria, Bill Gates is saying we're ready to commit $7 billion. What do you make out of all of this?
Yes, government is all about business, about the price of bread and whatever. So he has won the elections and he has been returned, sworn in, So he has to swing into action. And he can't just stay here and allow maybe manna to drop from heaven. He has to scout for investment, particularly, at this critical time when it's so much money. And if you look at the nature of meetings he held yesterday in Paris, you understand what I'm saying. The Afro-Exim Bank, So by and large, the president, like he's saying, one of the catch headlines yesterday, Nigeria is ready for business. So it's inviting investors to come to the business environment, and particularly, like I normally say, he's economically literate, unlike just politicians that we have, they just come. So it's part of it. And if you look at what Bill Gates is saying, so I think it's a source of concern, particularly the issue of polio. We thought that, Nigeria is
over that
issue, but it's the problem is still resurging, So I think
we've been recording a few cases.
Yeah. So I think it's a high time for all the stakeholders at all levels of government, to really do the needful to eradicate this once and for all.
Okay, but shouldn't something be done, on our health sector? Because so far we've not seen any moves being made to revamp the health sector. And even on Guardian, it actually has it that 20% doctors and 33% nurses actually diagnose inaccurately. And this is the federal government hinting on this.
Yes, it has been a very recurring problem. So it is not just about the manpower. We talk about the doctor to patient ratio. We talk about, can I call it capital flight? Doctors moving to US and what have you. But we don't talk about how competent are these doctors. We can count so many VIPs, Nigerian VIPs, who were sent to their early graves, if there is anything like that, because of wrong diagnosis, particularly by Nigeria. It's a factor of so many things. How qualitative our medical institutions. Is the Nigerianness in us equally part of that medical training institutions? Look at the MDCN. Yeah, every year, trained doctors are subjected to exams. If you see the failure, the percentage is outrageous.
High.
Exactly. So, like other sectors, even the medical sector is really in trouble. It is not about the number of doctors that we have. How many of them are competent, to do common diagnosis? There are instances whereby you go to a medical center, and a doctor as you talk, he's Googling. Yes, there are instances like that. Not once, not twice. As you are explaining what your problems are to you, he's Googling to look at the symptoms and the likely remedies. This has to stop. But like I tell you, it is just not one sector. Let's talk about the police, for instance. You say they are corrupt, they are this, but they're Nigerians. So this corruption has permeated almost all the nooks and crannies of the society, and something big needs to be done about it.
Okay, well, Nuruddin, let's backtrack a little bit. So, earlier in the conversation, we started by asking your take about the president and what he's been doing since he started in office. He's currently in Paris, and he says we're ready for business. However, on the other hand, he seems unperturbed about what's going on, at the presidential election petitions court. I mean, just yesterday we see a witness that the PDP brought, and he said about a couple of BVAS machines were tampered with, categorically stating that results were deleted from these machines. Shouldn't the president have cause to worry?
From experience, I don't think he should. You understand? His lawyers are taking care of that. But more importantly, elections were conducted across 36 states, plus the FCT. 774 local governments across the country. 109 senatorial districts, about 360 federal constituencies, about 140,000 polling units.
I think 176.
76 polling units, you understand? These issues, the thinking is this. What the data analyst said yesterday, for instance, is just a one-off thing. Is it enough to invalidate the election?
Because I know that the APC's council had questioned him, on whether he's aware that the sample that he presented to the court represented just 0.16%, of the total.
So that is the thinking. Whether, I don't know, without prejudice to the tribunal, We have a system whereby the moment you win an election, you are returned, your opponent will go to court and you'll be sworn in. The electoral umpire will be by your side.
But is he supposed to, be bothered about what's happening in court rather than, focusing on,
I think that is it. And, the probability of invalidating the election, I don't want to say the percentage.
Of course, let's not talk about that. But in your opinion, you feel he's making the right moves and taking the right decisions by not allowing himself to be disturbed or swayed by the activities in court. He should let his lawyers do what.
Yeah, I think that's how it should be.
While he faces.
Yeah, that's how it should be. For now, he's the president. So let him be presidential in what he's doing. Okay. Let him concentrate on Nigeria and Nigerians. Let his lawyers handle, and the party handles the tribunal.
Okay, so talking about leading and being the president and focusing on Nigeria. Now, we're not going to have it easy now, are we? Because, from the 1st of July, there's the tariff hike. Of course, we know that NLC is doing the best that it can. But then again, there was a planned protest and that never happened. And we're still dealing with the cost of fuel subsidy removal as it is. And then, the issue that is most pressing right now, in the minds of many Muslim faithfuls is the cost of, rising cost of commodities in the market, aside the rising cost of even rams and sheep. So, how has it been? Just tell us your experience.
Yeah, it has not been easy, naturally. But on the other hand, I'm a realist. I'm a realist in the sense that there are certain measures that need to be taken. He was elected by majority of Nigerians, to improve their commonwealth. But they didn't tell him how he will do that.
But he claimed to have the answer.
And many Nigerians believed him. That's why they elected him.
They used past tense, believed.
No, that was the election. Until it is determined, like you mentioned, the tribunal and the Supreme Court, Therefore, it is left for him now. He's on the seat to look. How am I going to stop ASU strike? He reincarnated the student loan, right? How am I going to end this perennial fuel scarcity, the corruption, the endemic corruption in it?
But some would argue
removing the subsidy, for instance.
Just before you go on, even Daily Trust carried a story about salary earners becoming cab drivers. I think I've experienced a few that when they're on their way home, they pick people up and they get paid for their fuel, or even they organize within their colleagues in the office. They pay them some amount for fuel so they can transport themselves to and from work, and saying some even go as far as sleeping in their offices to avoid having to spend extra. out of out of their pockets for fuel?
It's good that Husseina is asking these questions because, when we say he's trying to make things better, of course, you mentioned he reincarnated the Student Loan Act. All of these policies, in my mind, ends up taking money away from Nigerians. Resources that they are already managing, dealing with the cost of the fuel subsidy removal. It's
still on 30% minimum wage.
It's still a root shock. And I must say that a lot of Nigerians seem to be traumatized in one way or the other, really, because, it just came out of an administration that a lot would say was not the best at the time. And then, you're being shocked with these different forms of policy being introduced that ends up taking money away from you or even increasing the cost of living so exponentially that some people even begin to wonder, I'm working and at the end of the month, what I'm getting as take home cannot cater for all of my needs. So are we better off currently?
Let me reiterate what I said earlier. I'm a Nigerian, but a realist. Yeah, I differ with so many people on so many issues because the way I look at them. You want infrastructure, you want stable power, you want better schools, better teachers. How do you get them? All these things requires huge funds. And you don't want more debt. Because now you're already talking about, we have almost, it's going through the rooftops, exhausting our sustainability rates. How do you do all this? Is it by magic? Or you'll just recite some incantations or prayers and dollars will drop from? No. There are some measures that need to be taken. And like I tell you, he's a driving seat now. For 8 years, Buhari's administration, even before he was elected, he did not believe in subsidy. But he superintended the worst subsidy regime Nigeria ever had in the last 8 years. He handed it over to this administration. What do you expect him to do? To be spending over 6 trillion or 7 trillion, more than 40% of our budget on subsidy that almost everybody believes is plagued with corruption and what have you. No, that's why he quickly...
No, but I think a lot of people would actually agree with you on that. But what they disagree with is the fact that, nothing has been put in place yet to cushion the effect of the removal for the masses.
I agree. I agree.
And don't forget, Mara Nuruddin, that there were speculations. In fact, Daily Trust reported of a planned increase to about 114% the salaries of the president. Yes, I know
which
that
has been denied by
it was debunked by the government. However, the Daily Trust never said it was approved by the president. We said it was a planned increase expected to happen. So don't you think this, sows a seed of discord, sort of? You're putting us in so much pain and then you're paying yourself for it.
You should know that these guys are not up to 1 month in office. Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission responsibility primarily is to do that, and they just did it by January. There is Nigerian Wages Commission, which reviews the wages of civil servants. So we don't know what is happening to them. You understand. But the Revenue Mobilization did its own work, which was in January. So it is now, I think maybe we are fast, we want to put the cart before the horse. Let Tinubu approve it, then we'll see how serious he is. Nobody is on mine. And I don't think that they even presented that to him. That is, and again, if you look at even this increase, it doesn't make anything much. How much is the salary of the president? But look at how much he spends.
But the expectation would be that, when you come in, especially in situations like this, we know that democracy is a very, very, very expensive venture to go into, and maintaining our politicians and our leaders costs the country a lot of money. So perhaps for the sake of PR, wouldn't it have been better if, I mean, they doused this down for a while and then announced it much later? Because we cannot be suffering. For example, I'm just trying to read the minds of an average Nigerian. We cannot be suffering. You cannot remove subsidy. You cannot remove the free education that we've been enjoying. You cannot remove the electricity tariff and then come at us with a planned increase in your salaries. Come on. We should be thinking about reducing the cost.
I say you are putting the cart before the horse. Without any, I don't know what will happen to the lady commissioner that made that statement in.
Of course.
In Kenya. But what I'm saying here is this: she's a commissioner representing that state. If, for instance, Chief Dele Alake or Gbajabiamila, the chief of staff to the president, or any other appointee of the president, comes forward and make that declaration, you know what Nigerians will do. It will elicit a very mass. But what the lady was doing, and look at even the context. I don't want to vilify her so much, but it's the role of the revenue mobilization. It was done since January. So, because, of the anger, but by and large, we want better education, good infrastructure, stable power supply. We want bandits out of our land. We want Boko Haram out of our land. We don't want kidnappers. We don't want ritualists. We want an end to criminal violence.
Okay.
But how do you do that?
Mr. Nuru,
you have to make money. And how do you make money? By borrowing more or by tasking Nigerians. Like now, the next item should be the expansion of the tax net. You have 3 cars. But now with the 514 naira, something now you have surrendered. You are only using one.
I do not have 3 cars. I do not have 3 cars.
You understand?
I do not have 3 cars.
And you know something? Maybe very briefly. Nigerians now are devising ways of making. Go to US. We go to that place. We work extra hard to make money. Yeah, you work in 3 places or more to earn more. Now, some civil servant who sell, okay, I'm a civil servant level 10 or 8. I have 3 wives living in Abuja with 13 children.
As a civil servant.
And you want President Tinubu to be feeding all this.
All right.
So maybe we have to look inward and rearrange our...
Okay, 3 cars and 3 wives.
Let's move away from that. I think he loves the number 3, by the way.
I have only one after all.
All right, let's take a look at the lead story on the Guardian newspaper talking about the flood, in some parts of the country. Enough, as far as a lot of us are concerned, enough has actually been said about it. And, it's like a recurring issue. Is it possible to actually find a permanent solution, to flooding in Nigeria?
You see, I want to add to that because I know that every year the Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, gives out predictions, expect so and so rainfall. And NISA, the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, also does the same. So the question is, what do we do with these early warning signals and what do we do with this information? Because I understand that the governors are supposed to take this and then prepare mitigating factors to ensure that there are no casualties. But then at the end of the day, it seems to be a tradition for every year we record floodings in different parts of the country and wait for NEMA to swoop in to share palliative and mattresses. It's an awful sight. What can we do to just prevent this once and for all?
Like you rightly said, the NASA and NIMET prediction or forecast are only used by our governors, particularly at the state level, to plan for palliatives and relief materials. Nothing else. When they look at it, okay, I'm the governor of XYZ state, I have 36 local governments and 26 will be affected. I'm looking at the money. What is the cause of this flooding? We have said it over and over again, and nothing is being done. It happens mostly in our urban areas. Most of the states capitals, for instance, we have 36. Maybe with the exception of Abuja, even Lagos, there is zero municipality authorities presence. Gutters are not being cleared off.
Systems.
You understand? Waterways are being built upon with government complicity. In situations whereby even if there is a flood, for instance now, there is no an open space where the victims will be taken to. So it's still a factor of our municipality plans, which is zero in most of the state. And more importantly, the best of us, the most law-abiding citizens in Kano, in Kaduna, are those that will bring refuse to from their houses and dump it on the waterways outside. They are the best, the cleaners of us. So why don't we have flood? And authorities are happy because they use it to siphon more money for mattresses, for bags of pure waters, and what have you. It's a daily recording. They use the forecast just to plan for relief materials.
All right. So I understand that we're short of time now. I want to thank you very much, Malam Nuruddin Abdullah, the editor of 21st Century Chronicle, for joining us on the newspaper review this morning. And
My
also
pleasure.
for telling us about 3 wives and 3 cats. I don't know where he got that figure from anyways, but we do hope that you would come again once we call.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
thank you. All right.
All right, we'll be going on a break now and return at the top of the hour to serve you more on Daybreak. Do stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
That's great. It's good to see you.
All right, welcome back. It's still daybreak and it's the top of the hour. I'm Sakir Ibrahim. Thank you so much for staying with us till this time. And if you missed the first hour of the conversation, you can do well to follow us across all our social platforms and follow the conversation live on YouTube.
All right, you're welcome. It's top of the hour, and I'm Darshan Hussein Usman. Thank you so much for staying tuned with us. Now we'll begin with the highlights at this hour. Pastor defrauds Kwara Varsity 19.3 million naira.
And also, police kill notorious criminal in Kogi, recovers weapons.
Alleged certificate forgery. Labour Party, PRP compel Mba to appear before election tribunal.
And to the details now, the Ilorin Zonal Command of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission on Wednesday arraigned an Ilorin-based associate pastor with the Living Faith Church, also known as Winners Chapel, Temidayo Eshenyi, for allegedly defrauding Landmark University of Muaron, Kwara State, to the tune of 19.3 million naira. Eshenyi, a lawyer and former member of the disciplinary committee of the Nigerian Bar Association, Ilorin branch, was docked on a 4-count charge bordering on dishonesty, misappropriation of funds belonging to the university before Justice Funsho Lawal of the Kwara State High Court, sitting in Ilorin. In a petition to the EFCC, Eshenyi, whilst being a counsel attorney to Landmark University, had access to her properties, title documents and funds. In the assumed capacity, it was alleged that Eshenyi was cheating, defrauding, misappropriating, and shortchanging his client to her utmost dismay. Specifically, in one of his alleged atrocities, the defendant between 2014 and 2022 managed a property known as Old Midland and Midland Building, belonging to Landmark University, situated along Emias Obo Road, Ilorin, which Eshenyi collected for 8 years and could not produce when asked. The petitioner also alleged that Eshenyi attempted to sell the property without instructions from the university, hence the petition to the EFCC. The defendant pleaded not guilty to the charge. Justice Lawal, while ruling on the application, admitted the defendant to bail in the sum of 10 million naira, with 2 shorties in the sum of 5 million each. The judge ordered that the shorties must have landed property within the jurisdiction of the court. The judge also, while adjourning the case to a date which would be communicated to the parties, ordered that the defendant should be remanded in custody of the EFCC pending the perfection of his bail conditions.
All right, the Joint Security Team in Kogi State Thursday said it has gunned down a notorious criminal, Kabir Bala, who was responsible for the killing of the People's Democratic Party woman leader, Mr. Salome Abu. The woman leader was burned to death in her residence at Ochadamu, Ofu Council area of the state in November 2019. Governorship election, that's 2019 governorship election. Now, the Kogi State Commissioner of Police, CP Akim Yusuf, disclosed this on Thursday at the State Police Headquarters in Lokoja while addressing newsmen. He said it will be recalled that the Kogi State government in October 2018 granted pardon in prerogative of mercy as part of rehabilitation to one notorious gang leader named Kabir Bala alias Okwo in Ejule of local government area. However, the said Kabir Bala remained an unrepentant criminal with lots of atrocities traced to him, which includes dealing in illegal arms, kidnapping and killing in the state. Now, several cases had been traced to him, such as burning the life of Mrs. Salome Abu, a PDP woman leader in Olu local government area in her residence on November 2019, killing of 2 Igala youths, Umoru Abe and Unewu Sule, on 20th of April 2022 at Ejule. He also killed 5 Fulani herders, namely Ibrahim Haruna and Shaibu, along Aloma Road, Ofu local government area in April 2022, and Muhammad and Dauda on 3rd March 2023. Other crimes committed by Kabir Bala and his gang are attack on troops of the Nigerian Navy and dispossessing them of 4 rifles at Aloma village on 4th March 2022. Now, the firearms were later returned to the Navy following high-powered intervention. The commissioner said that he was also responsible for 7 kidnappings along Itobe and Yigba Highway from 5th to 28th May 2023.
And also, both the Labour Party and the People's Redemption Party have asked the Enugu State Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal to compel Governor Peter Mba to appear before the tribunal to answer charges of alleged falsification of National Youth Service Corps NYSC certificates. The governor tendered to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). At the resumed hearings of the petitions by both political parties on Thursday, counsels to the Labour Party raised for motion interrogatories seeking answers from the second respondent, which is Governor Peter Mba. Some of the questions being raised by the Labour Party to Mba, which the petitioners want the answer, are: when and where did he serve? When was he appointed as Chief of Staff? The date. When was he made Commissioner for Finance in Enugu State? We want to know the duration he served, they said. The Labour Party wants Mba to produce before the tribunal the letter of appointment as Chief of Staff, the letter of appointment as Commissioner for Finance under Dr. Chimaroke Nnamani, and the institutions he said he attended. We want to have the documents showing that he attended those institutions, they added. The tribunal will deliver a ruling on whether Mba will appear before it to answer the Labour Party's questions on Saturday, the 24th of June. But the tribunal ordered Governor Mba to appear before it on Friday, June 24th, following an application made by the PRP through its counsel, Ozo Alex Amujiogo. Governorship candidates of the Labour Party and PRP, Honorable Chijoke Edeoga and Elder Christopher Agu, respectively, were in court.
All right, with that, we're done with the highlights. We'll move on to more packages. Now, the Lagos State Police Command on Thursday paraded 32 suspects for their alleged involvement in cultism, traffic robbery, and other criminality acts. Now, the parade took place at the command headquarters in Ikeja, GRA. The report.
While parading the 32 suspects, the Lagos State Police Commissioner assured Lagosians that the command under his watch will not relent in the fight against any form of criminality. The Commissioner, who was represented by the command's Public Relations Officer, Benjamin Hundeyin, said the command recovered 1 hammer, 5 axes, 2 knives, 5 locally made pistols, 2 locally made double-barrel guns, 22 live cartridges, 2 expanded cartridges, as well as 1 Toyota Hilux. Hundeyin further stated that they arrested 8 cultists from Ikorodu, 3 from Isolo, 11 traffic robbers at Ijora, and 5 other cultists from Badagry.
Happy to inform the people of Ikorodu that with their cooperation, we've been able to take out 8 of the suspects causing unrest in their community. We also have an interesting case here. Is a case of stealing. The Toyota Hilux, you can see right over there, the white Hilux, was actually on a car stand, and 2 people came in the middle of the night to rob this vehicle. The car stand is somewhere in Ilukweju. It later turned out that one of the robbers is actually a security guard employed by the owner of the car stand. But the day he was off duty, he connived with one other to come and rob that place. And the security guard on duty that day was actually seriously injured, and they were able to take away the Toyota Hilux. And we immediately got information, we swung into action, and were able to recover the vehicle in faraway Kaduna State.
Command also paraded a police sergeant for failing to report at his new station in Osun State, but rather resorted to extorting unsuspecting motorists.
One of them is a police officer, but he's a deserter. He has been transferred out of Lagos State to Osun State for over a year, and he has refused to go report. He has remained in Lagos, conniving with some other civilians to engage in this nefarious activity. His name is Sergeant Oluwaniyi Ichanusi, 36 years, and his partner in crime that we have here is Maxwell Agida, 42 years. He's a driver, commercial bus driver, corporate driver, who joins him to accost motorists, claim to be police officers, and claim to take them. They have different gimmicks: take them to EFCC, take them to police, lock them up, make sure they go to jail, and their victims, out of panic, would actually part with huge sums of money. So they have been arrested.
The command assured that cultism, which has been identified as a major security challenge facing Lagos, will receive the needed attention in order to ensure that it is nipped in the bud.
Okay, following a 2015 stampede that resulted in the death of more than 2,000 pilgrims in Mecca, authorities in Nigeria have begun an aggressive campaign to sensitize pilgrims towards a hitch-free exercise. This comes as Saudi Arabia will be hosting 3.5 million pilgrims for the 2023 Hajj exercise. Sharif Al-Hassan reports from Mecca.
For the first time since the outbreak of coronavirus in 2020, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will be opening its doors to 3.5 million pilgrims the world over, the first in recent times for this year's pilgrimage, amidst tight security and precautionary measures to avert another stampede. But that's not enough. Critical stakeholders from Nigeria, drawn from across the 36 states, including FCT, are making appropriate plans in making sure pilgrims conduct a hitch-free Hajj exercise right from Mina, Arafat, and Muzdalifah.
The outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic hindered the country from accepting international pilgrims in both 2020 and 2021, consequently limiting visitors for Hajj in 2022, even after the country had contained the deadly virus. In this year's pilgrimage, Nigerian authorities are not letting anything to chance, most especially as pilgrims set to depart for Mina on Monday, 26 June, to perform Hajj rituals for 3 to 5 days. Mina will be a melting point for the 3.5 million pilgrims, and therefore preachers and critical stakeholders are visiting pilgrims in their hotels, carrying out sensitization campaign.
Well, we have been in talks with the pilgrims right from our arrival here in Saudi Arabia, from Medina to Mecca after the Umrah. We have always admonished them to be good ambassadors of the state, good Muslims, and above all, good citizens of the world. We are here on a holy pilgrimage, and on no condition should we be accused of conducts that are unbecoming of Muslims, and conducts that can be an embarrassment to our state and our nation.
If you look at the preparations from home, you know, a lot of ulamas have been involved by the governor and the government. You know, they have been fully sensitized at home, and if you look at the situation right here, everything is going well, because in every house and in every gathering, the ulamas have been going around sensitizing people on how to go about doing their rights, and definitely they have been coping with it.
Important things for a pilgrim to note is to be very obedient and be very faithful to the local rules, that is the Saudi Arabia rules and regulations, because they own the place, they know the place, and they have planned for over 3 million people. So therefore, there will be much more concern on crowd control. And a visitor or a pilgrim might not know the regulations of the crowd control without being guided by the leadership of his country. So for Nigeria, we have able leadership with the Hajj Commission, and then the Amirul Hajj team. We are very, very supportive in sensitizing the people on the way to follow.
It could be recalled that on 24th September 2015, a crowd rush and stampede resulted in the deaths of more than 2,000 pilgrims, many of whom were suffocated or crushed during the annual Hajj pilgrimage at Mina, Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and certainly this is what everyone here is trying to avoid. From Makkah to Mukarramah, Sharif Al-Hassan.
All right, as Muslims in Nigeria prepare to celebrate Eid al-Adha, the traditional sacrifice of goats is becoming increasingly difficult for many families due to an insignificant increase in prices. Now in Katsina, the cost of goats has significantly risen compared to that of last year, making it challenging for some to afford the sacrifice. As a result, sellers are recording low patronage while consumers' purchasing power has drastically reduced. Jamil Mabai has more.
Ram sacrifice is a symbol of the Eid al-Kabir celebration. It is a tradition for privileged Muslims to sacrifice rams during the festival. But this year, the prices have hit an all-time high. A rise in price from 20,000 naira to 70,000 naira last year to 50,000 to 150,000 naira this year is making it difficult for many families to afford the sacrifice.
The price of rams is high this time around because things have changed compared to last year. A ram of 100,000 last year is now 200,000.
Frankly speaking, I'm not surprised by the sudden rise in the price of the ram because of the following reasons. One, they devaluate our currency, depreciation of naira as well as inflation, and which affects the purchasing power of many Nigerians to the extent that today Nigerians are not talking of ram. They are thinking of food, how to buy food. And you know, food is more essential than ram.
Experts attribute the high prices to a combination of factors, including the devaluation of naira, inflation, and the farmer hardware crisis, which have disrupted the supply chain.
Again, also there is this issue of insecurity, especially farmer herders conflict, which has been affecting actually the even availability of the rams.
While some sellers are struggling with low patronage, others are benefiting from the high demand.
Whoever bought ram from us last year came back this year. Some have already paid for the rams here. I have even sent for more rams from Dankama.
Some people want the government to intervene and subsidize the prices of rams and increase salaries. But experts believe that sacrificing a ram is a luxury, not a necessity.
In a situation whereby you just subsidize ram, you understand, at the end of the day you will discover that the only beneficiaries perhaps will be civil servant. Like there are some states, especially in northern Nigeria, that give a ram to civil servant. You understand? But what about those who are not civil servant? Ram is a luxury. In a situation whereby we have a government that cannot even subsidize food stock, how can you expect them to subsidize ram?
For many families, the high prices mean they will have to skip the tradition of sacrificing a ram during the festival. Jamilu Mabai, Trust TV News, Katsina.
And ahead of this year's Eid al-Kabir celebrations, the price of ram in Kano State has doubled due to the increase in the cost of living. Trust TV's correspondent Idris Jibrin reports that unlike last year, traders say they are recording low patronage this year. Have a look.
Salisu Ilyasu is the chairman of Ram Sellers Association in this market. He says the price of ram and other related animals used for sacrifice by Muslims has tripled compared to what was obtainable last year, and that not so many people are coming forward to buy. Honestly, this year there is problem. Last year, many people are coming forward to buy ram. But this year, you can see the market is scanty. It's only us that are within here. There are not so much buyers coming here to buy. And this is because of the so much problems that we are having. The problem of feeds and supplement, high cost of transportation, courtesy of fuel price increase, among other challenges, are largely responsible for the problem this year.
Tsadar abincin dabbobin da kuma tsadar mai.
Well, some of the problems that also come together to bring about these much challenges that we are facing is the issue of food and supplement. The food we are buying is so expensive. The transportation that we use to transport from places far and wide where we used to go and buy these rams is also very expensive. Sometimes we pay 10,000, 11,000 naira per ram before it gets to Kano from, let's say, Bauchi. According to traders, although the price has tripled, but they try to bring things down in such a way that people can afford. Yet, the price, they say, ranges from 60,000 naira to 250,000 naira per ram, the worst within the last 3 years. You see, this ram that you are seeing, they are very expensive. Like this one, last year we sold this one about 30,000, 35,000 naira. But this year we are selling this type about 60,000 naira. So you can get ram of 60,000 naira up to 250,000 naira, in most cases up to 300,000 naira. In some places they are even selling it up to 400,000 naira. Rams and other sacrificial animals like cow and camels are nevertheless available in most markets visited across Kano State. But there are growing concerns that the price could even go high in the next coming days. Idris Jubrin, Trust TV News, Kano.
All right, with that, we'll take a quick breather, and when we return, we'll move on to our discussion. Welcome back, and now let's move on to our first discussion. With less than a week to this year's Eid al-Kabir celebration, Muslim faithfuls across Nigeria are lamenting the high cost of ram and other animals permissible for slaughtering, even as traders attribute the exponential increase to the economic realities in the country. Now, market surveys in Abuja, Lagos, Kwara and Kano states reveal as much as 100% increase in the cost of some of the animals and also the commodities, which traders have said affects the volume of trade compared to the previous years. Now, while many of the traders attributed the increase in the cost of the animals and food items to the high cost of transportation occasioned by the recent removal of subsidy on petroleum motor spirit, on others as well, others, especially those that import animals and some goods from neighboring countries, blame the increase of the naira devaluation, which has weakened the purchasing power of the country's currency. Now we have in the studio Hashim Salahuddin, a public commentator, and Dr. Tefa Abraham, an economist, to look at the challenges of shopping for Eid amidst subsidy removal. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
Good morning. Thank you. Welcome to the program, gentlemen. So, Dr. Hashim, let me start with you. Perhaps you should tell us what your thoughts are, about the current rise in the cost of livestock and animals, ahead, as well as other commodities ahead of the Eid celebration.
Yeah, I mean, it is only natural that because that PMS has its own effects across the entire commodity market, and when on May 29th, the president at that time made that declaration, of course, instantly it was translated into a policy action. and that actually necessitated the 100% skyrocketing prices that we noticed across board. Unfortunately, there were no mitigation that were put in place before this declaration happened, and we didn't see any sort of government deliberate immediate action plan. Yes, there are conversations ongoing, but of course, knowing fully well that we have about 133 million people living below poverty line, they are going to be the first to bear the brunt of this situation. And unfortunately, Nigerians are actually suffering from an age-long political and economic mismanagement of the subsidy regime. Because what we should have seen in the first instance is actually a probe into that particular regime for a particular years. Then, of course, we can delve into the removal entirely, preparing the minds of Nigerians. But unfortunately, it came as a shock, it came as a surprise. And then, of course, the shock has affected prices, and this has also adversely affected a number of value chains.
Ilyasu is the chairman of Ram Sailors
This is the current situation as it were.
He says the price of ram and other related animals
used some kind of prices that will jack up 100%, just like you mentioned in your intro. This is actually affecting every single commodity in the market. Obviously, family are going to be suffering because particularly for those who are low-income earners, this is going to have some little bit of challenge and setback. And as you can see, the purchasing power is also very low. People are unable to buy. And this also is just a clear translation to the fact that people are not even accessible to the current availability of cash. So accessibility is a problem, availability is a problem, affordability is a problem. So these three pillars are really going to be an issue for us to deal with in the coming days.
Okay, let's come to you, Dr. Tefa. Now, from an economic perspective, right, what factors do you actually believe is responsible for the high cost of transportation and also its impact on the prices of goods?
Okay, economically, if you fuel in the Nigerian economy plays a central role in a typical general equilibrium model. Just imagine like a cobweb. Fuel price is that point at the middle whereby once there's a shake or a distortion in the model, every other sector responds. And that's because of the monolithic structure of our Nigerian economy, depending on crude oil and fuel over a long period of time. In an ideal economy where all sectors are vibrant and is diversified, no sector can have that kind of global impact on an economy. But the Nigerian economy right now is structured in a way that it is monolithic, and crude oil price plays a central role in terms of having effect on the overall stability. Then subsidy being associated with fuel price of PMS in Nigeria, made it to become like that policy handle where the government uses to reach out to poor people, vulnerable people, and to ameliorate the impact of our economic environment on everybody. So things are expensive, salary is low, fuel subsidy. You want to reach out to people that are socially excluded, unemployed, poverty is high, fuel subsidy. So rather than strengthening our national social investment program over the years, from FIP to MAMSA to all those, the one under Jonathan, the subsidy withdrawal regime, and the current national social investment program, rather than strengthening this thing over the years, fuel subsidy became that approach of reaching out to the Nigerian people. Remember under President Obasanjo, when they were to end toll gate, the next thing was to put subsidy on price and subsidy on PMS. So it became the pathway to reaching out to, it became an economic intervention policy program for the Nigerian economy, rather than strengthening social institutions and ensuring that any adverse effect on the economy is ameliorated through planned mechanism. So that is the role that fuel price plays. But like you said, the withdrawal of the fuel subsidy is the major factor responsible for this distortion in price. However, we shouldn't act like the fuel subsidy withdrawal was sudden. The person that made it sudden was President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. Right from the preparation of 2023 budget, we all knew from the federal government budget that fuel subsidy will end by June. But around 1 month, 3 weeks to the end of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, the Minister of Finance announced that it had been suspended indefinitely. So they would have just allowed that discussion to continue. So that indefinitely, people just became unexpected. Relax. Then on the day of swearing in, we just heard those 4 words: fuel subsidy has ended, and the markets began to react. Sellers, buyers began to react. Hoarding started. Artificial pricing started. Then we have all these issues we have now.
Okay, Dr. Tefa, so yes, subsidy is gone. That's the root shock we all got on May 29. But then again, aside from subsidy removal, we know that there is Naira devaluation. So can you also explain how this has affected the purchasing power of, Nigerians, as we are saying today?
The Naira devaluation is relative to the US dollar. And ideally, economically, there's this thing we call the law of one price. The price of any asset or commodity, asset meaning stock price, bond price, price of cars, anything, the chain you wear, the head tie, the shoe, the price of any of these assets should be the same worldwide. That's the law of one price. In other words, typically, the price of a typical McDonald's donut should be the same in US as in Lagos as in Canada. Similarly, the price of our well-packaged kulikuli in Nigeria should be the same in Minna, Niger State, and the same in Netherlands, and the same in Austria. So that's the law of one price. Then the law of any commodity, gold, for example, diamond, should be the same. Now, and currencies trade, the international trade uses dollar a lot and other international currencies. So once a country's economy or a country's currency is weak, or it is being made to reflect its artificial value, that is where international market begin to shy away from that economy. So economics, from the classical angle, wants every country to have an exchange rate that is floated, that is not being distorted by forceful regulation. Just allow the goods or services of your country to reflect international price so that investors can move freely. Classic economic thinking is that markets are integrated, so investors can move in free entry, free exit, consumers are rational, good, everybody is transitive and consistent. But because of the pricing of our own Naira related to the dollar, which over the time under Emefiele was overmanaged, investors shied away because the value of $100 in Nigerian economy will not be $100, so everybody moved away. So that policy move in terms of unifying the exchange rate economically is a good move. It comes back to that my discussion on law of one price, so that Bill Gates, Microsoft, our own Dangote's refinery, the lady selling Ankara, the other guy selling diamond, everybody can trade worldwide using the entire global market as one marketplace where prices reflect their own their true price. So this is the economic thinking. Of course, the law of one price has a lot of assumptions. It assumes that markets are free and fair. It assumes that regulation is clear. It assumes there's no transportation cost. It assumes that no transaction cost. Of course, by the time you factor this thing into the Nigerian market, you'll see that prices will distort some way. Yes. So just like the commentator said, rather than just allowing the Nigerians to face this all of a sudden exposure to pure economic thinking, we needed to have really anticipated. Because like I said in my discussion on law of one price, transportation cost is not free. There are regulatory issues, there are legal issues that need to be addressed through laws. These things would have been fixed before you just allow these things to hit us all of a sudden like that. But in terms of economic thinking, it looks good, but the effect now is how it affects the people. A lot of thinking and consultation need to go on to be able to ameliorate this effect.
All right, let's come back to you, Mr. Hashim. Now, you also talked about, the purchasing power of the people. Now, experts have actually said that we've not even seen the end of it. In July, it's likely to get worse. They also say that inflation is expected to rise following the current depreciation of the Naira. Now, how bad do you think it will get for Nigerians and also for the economy when there's a low demand for goods by the consumers?
Yeah, I think that is going to be a little bit of an issue, knowing fully well that you're also going to have a dip in income. And of course, when inflation also jacks to the roof, this would mean that there will be a lot of luxury items will definitely be things that people would have to shy away from in the interim. And also, you have not added that the cost of electricity also is likely going to jack in July.
And airfares too.
Oh yes. So if you put all of these indicators together, it tells you very clearly that those within the average income bracket would have quite a lot to confront in the coming month. And of course, it is not like in the immediate that we are going to be seeing the effect and the value chain that the subsidy removal are going to be translating into. But maybe there will be some level of social intervention and social investment. Maybe those who, like he mentioned, over the years should have been strengthened. Over the years, I think one of the biggest challenges we have in the country is that our social security infrastructure has been largely undermined. And that is because we do not have we have had successive governments who never had the poor in mind. And this is because it is an elite capture of the society. And when you have a society where the elites are the ones who determine policies and programs, they see it from that prism. And when you have the issue of morality and legality coming into economic conversation, then it begins to have this kind of interpretation to say, okay, if we have to do this, then it is a moral issue. Maybe we are doing a favor to the citizens, forgetting that one of the things you took on when you took the oath of office was to provide some kind of welfare that would actually... So living standard had actually reduced and might reduce further until probably in another 6 months to 12 months when we see some sort of reinvestment of what the subsidy removal would do. That is if you don't disaggregate the issue of corruption into it anymore. Because what we are going to likely see is that tendencies are there that if investment in infrastructure happens, then we are likely going to some kind of offshoot. For instance, electricity becomes very constant. Yes, it will be difficult to access because of the cost, but you are going to see some kind of smallholder investors trying to also do their thing. And then, of course, the economy is actually fluid. One of the biggest consequences of the absence of this kind of investment is the fact that small, medium enterprises have suffered the consequences. It is cheaper for you to import rather than for you to produce. Overhead is very high. And that is very clear because people believe that, look, if you have to pay so much for electricity that is even not there, you have to pay for it because you are actually connected to the grid. And of course, you have to pay to buy diesel and service your own water head and service overhead costs. So all of the overhead costs and of course multiple taxation. So the enabling environment for a smallholder investor to survive is actually very weak. And that was why I talked about the fact that investors naturally will take the back seat because they realize very clearly that, look, it is not profitable for us to get into this economy for now. Maybe again, because of this harmonization, we will see some level of revitalization that people will now begin to, the players want to now come in and say, look, then maybe there is some level of hope. And then, of course, the monetary policy. And if you look at the president, for the first time, he decided to change a number of templates. He didn't appoint a special advisor on economic matters. He did two things. He appointed a special advisor on revenue. He appointed a special advisor on monetary policy because he knew very clearly that those are the two biggest elephants that he must tackle if he needed to make some quick impact. So I'm hoping that those templates would actually yield some immediate remediation, because what we need now is remediation plan. Now, but until the issue of salary increment and all that come in, what are the remedial measures that must be put in place? You need massive investment in transportation, for instance. 100% increase in transport system across is actually huge in a place where government is not even investing in those kind of arena. So it is very important that we take a look holistically at all of this infrastructure, see what we can do otherwise, and if we continue in our usual policy somersault regime, going into the subsidy removal, I think Nigerians are really going to be facing a very daunting situation.
All right, Doctor, you were doing a lot of nodding while Dr. Salahuddin was talking, so perhaps you have something to add to it. And let me also add a follow-up. Do you see any other factors, maybe such as supply chain disruptions or market insufficiencies that might also add to the challenge or the problem that we face?
Well, I say luckily now, COVID-19 prepared us for the hard times. So already, like for example now, Certainly, there will be disruptions in supply and demand chains, but it will be, this time around, it's coming from transactional cost angle. From COVID-19, we had total shutdown in demand and supply channels because of that component of stay at home, sit at home, that kind of angle. But this time around, supply and demand channels will be affected through transactional cost and increase in transportation costs and all those other costs associated with it. So what people need to do is to innovate around how to beat this cost. For example, people already, COVID-19 has exposed us to online way of having meetings. Increasingly, I often see people like you in the media having difficulties getting guests on a regular. You may have to invest in your online infrastructure so that people can join. And then for the people, for small traders already, like I said, because of COVID-19, through the linkage with their daughters and sons and neighbors, you see that woman who sells, that typical woman that sells yam, or that typical man that sells ram, is now in partnership with his young son or young daughter neighbor or young son neighbor to use their social media platform as plug so that they sell. This social infrastructure that we built around COVID-19 needs to be reactivated this time around. But this on the side of the people, what they need to do to ameliorate. Government function in the economy is welfareist. Markets are certainly out there for profit making. Anybody in the market is private sector. Government intervention must be welfareist. And the idea in a developing and emerging economy like ours here in Nigeria is to find where there are disequilibrium or distortions and to see how to help the people ameliorate those effects. And that's why it's important that government would continue to think about what to introduce this time around to ameliorate the effect. Many offices are already thinking of introducing bus fares to ameliorate the transport costs. Others are thinking of cutting down work days. However it is, something needs to be done, especially through wage increase. It's been long that we talked about minimum wage review, and this time around, it's not just the wage increase. Where you look at the inflationary angle, the energy cost, a lot of things need to be looked at, so that intervention will come in a way that it will reduce mitigate the adverse impact on people, but at the same time, not reintroducing subsidy in other aspects that will inflate corruption again. So this is the challenge that government, and that's why the answer for government is wide consultation, executive, legislature, judiciary, CSOs, expert, academia, sitting in different fora, just to find out how best to go about this.
All right. Yeah. Now, Mr. Hashim, Salah is, just around the corner, and we also know that we're still feeling the, pressure, the renewed pressure from all these reforms that the Tinubu administration is actually, bringing into play. Now, as far as we know, you can't even get a ram for 100,000 naira anymore. I think I read a report of Kwara State where it goes for 400,000 naira. Considering exactly. Now considering that Nigerians are facing this and that, it's actually sad to say that. I have to say that a lot of them will not be able to celebrate this Salah with ease. Now, what does it also affects the businesses as well. What does it mean for the economy and also Nigeria if we keep losing businesses? Because we've already lost a lot from the past administration with their policies and all that, and we're seeing a likelihood of that happening in this administration as well.
Yeah, if you do the graphical analysis, and I'm sure Dr. Tefa will be able to elucidate a little bit more, you will realize that we are a little bit on deep when it comes to the issue of businesses in this country. Unfortunately, we are more of a consuming economy now, more than producing, because most of the manufacturers and small business are a little bit on the dive. And I think for me, that should be one of the primary aim and focus for government, because if we produce more, one, we will end forex, and it will mean that we'll have to reduce the number of things. Two is the fact that with the new harmonization, it will allow us to keep our foreign reserve without even touching it, and probably swell it for a while, and then that can attract investors. And the third bit would be for me is to introduce some level of control, price control mechanism. If you do that, I think it will be able to stabilize to a large extent and provide people with some better alternatives. Second bit of it, and the flip side to it rather, is the fact that maybe it will also reduce our appetite for foreign goods. Okay, Nigerians are too classical, and we want to have this sophistry approach to most of our wares, you know, clothes, shoes, household items, cars. Maybe if we do those kind of localization of what we did, China did it, and of course, it went a very long way. Today we saw what China economy looks like. We need to also find a way to localize for us to be able to grow, and probably then after some years, we can begin to focus on that. But answering your question directly, is the fact that the loss in purchasing power and goods and services and access will not stop until we're able to find the right policy that can help us to do that kind of safeguard. Because what we need now is a safeguard measure, and that's why I talked about the welfareist approach by government. Because the welfare of citizens, the security and welfare, and the security is actually not just physical security, economic security, because livelihood is also a security. You need to find that kind of security that citizens can actually be very comfortable to be able to transact and engage in it. And I can tell you that in the last 2-3 weeks, since this regime had come into office, one thing is very classical, that access and purchasing power has dropped by 50%, if not 100%. And that is because even those who sell the PMS themselves now can tell you very clearly that nobody even comes in to buy anymore because they have lost so much market. Of course, I mean, how are you able to buy, okay, when you are able to have a minimum wage of 30,000 and you are going to buy 10 litre for close to 15,000 naira thereabout. So that tells you very, and that 10 litre, if you live, unfortunately, if you live in Zuba or Gwagwalada and you have to come to the central area to work, is a bit of a problem because 10 litre is gone. So how do you manage and survive? So that in itself will promote people finding alternative within the system. So corruption would actually begin to creep in because maybe areas you weren't looking at before, you have to find some kind of alternative in that regard. There may be, again, government will need to find a way to look at its existing templates. For instance, you don't have to put every government infrastructure within the city center, decentralize. Find one ministry, put it in Gwagwalada, put one ministry somewhere in Zuba, so that people can actually, within their neighborhood, have access. Then people can live proximity to where they actually have their offices around. And maybe finally for me again on this is that citizens' appetite also needs to be regulated. Unfortunately, when it comes to spiritual commitments like you have over the Salah, it is actually a spiritual journey, and of course, people wouldn't have some kind of alternative to it because, of course, it comes with some kind of burden, and you must somehow, if you have the means, need to be able to make that sacrifice. But with the current reality, I guarantee you that it will be very tough for a lot of Nigerians to be able to access and afford what is already in the market.
Dr. Tefa, would like you to share your concluding thoughts on this. Moving forward and beyond the Eid al-Kabir celebration, do you foresee a long-term effect? I'm tempted to say negative, but do you foresee a long-term effect, with the whole policies and removal of fuel subsidy that we've seen, over the course of the first 1 month of the president's assumption of office?
First of all, the reforms are important. It's important we face these reforms now. Remember in 2012, Jonathan would have been done with this fuel subsidy withdrawal. The same leadership
10 or 11 years.
Shut down Lagos, and so now we just have to face it. So the reforms are in the right direction. If we can be a bit straightforward as a country, we need the reforms. However, these reforms must be accompanied by social intervention and social safety net and investment in social infrastructure, very critical. Then with regards to the Salah celebration, the demand curve for RAM is inelastic. Economic theory does not touch people's choices and values. You allow this person smoking to smoke, you allow the woman who prefers gold to buy gold in the market she wants. Economics does not touch those things. Rather, economic managers try to make their own economy attractive as a hub of investment for trade. And that's why the whole advantage of Continental Free Trade Agreement and all those things is important. As in microeconomic thinking, you have right to buy, you living in Kano, you have right to buy Gari from Lagos. The person in Lagos can choose to buy Kilishi from Kano. What's important is that the economy is moving and everybody has something to exchange. So where I'm going with that is that the hike in the price of RAM does not translate to inflation. For inflation to be seen to be happening, is a basket of goods and services taken together. The general price of the goods and services in that basket must be seen to increase, and the goods and services in that basket must come from agriculture, tech, food, water, everything. So the hike in the price of RAM is also historic. Remember, each time there's a festive period, even including Christmas, Easter, or the demand for key items like chicken, goats, RAM increases. So for the people trading, please don't introduce artificial pricing into your price of RAM, because demand for RAM is inelastic for the typical person who wants to celebrate Salah. Don't make it look artificial. And government needs to increase their policing over market, all these people selling, so that price regulation, so that artificial people who raise price artificially will be done away, will be addressed.
All right, Dr. Tefa Abraham, thank you so much for your submissions, and it was quite an impressive and educative one. Also, Dr. Salahuddin Hashim, public commentator, thank you so much for joining on the program and sharing your thoughts. You know, on the rise of commodities ahead of the Eid al-Kabir celebrations. We do hope that you join again once we come calling, despite the removal of the fuel subsidy and the cost of transportation. Hussaina?
All right, well, with that, we've actually come to the end of Daybreak on Trust TV. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow on Daybreak Extra, same time, same station. I'm Darshan Hussaina Usman.
And I'm Sagir Ibrahim. Thank you so much for watching, and do join us again.